A millionaire suffers a serious accident and is saved by a recycling collector, but her actions changed his life. Before we start the story, comment below which city you are watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain was pouring heavily that night, turning the city streets into rivers. Alice was pulling her recycling cart, hurrying to get home before the storm got worse. Her 5-year-old daughter Luna was waiting for her, hungry and sleepy, in their small apartment in the suburbs. As she turned a corner, Alice heard the screech of tires and a deafening crash. Her heart raced as she ran towards the sound. At the intersection, a luxury car was crushed against a pole. The engine was still running, but there was no sign of movement inside the vehicle. Without thinking twice, Alice abandoned her cart and ran to the car. The driver's window was cracked, and a man was unconscious behind the wheel. The smell of leaking fuel intensified Alice's panic. She tried to open the door, but it was jammed. Using all her strength, she managed to force it open with difficulty. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted, her voice breathless as she tried to wake him up. The man, Victor, opened his eyes briefly. His vision was blurry, but he saw Alice's face illuminated by the flickering streetlight. Before he could say anything, he passed out again. Alice managed to release him from the seatbelt and, with effort, dragged him out of the car. She had barely moved him a few meters away when a small explosion rocked the vehicle. Frightened but relieved to be safe, she watched as the lights of ambulances and police cars approached. Paramedics arrived quickly and placed Victor on a stretcher. Alice left before the police could ask her any questions. She was wet, exhausted, and her hands were shaking, but she didn't want to be late getting home. When she entered her small apartment, she found Luna asleep on the couch, hugging her teddy bear. Alice sighed, changed her clothes, and knelt beside her daughter, stroking her hair. "Everything will get better, Luna, I promise." Far away at the hospital, Victor was taken to the emergency room. As the medical team worked to stabilize him, a vague thought crossed his mind before he lost consciousness completely. He needed to find the woman who had saved his life. Morning light streamed through the hospital windows as Victor slowly woke up. His eyes opened with difficulty, adjusting to the fluorescent light in the room. A throbbing pain in his head immediately reminded him of the accident. He tried to sit up, but felt the weight of his condition and decided to stay still. A few minutes later, the room door opened. It was Lucas, his faithful assistant. Always efficient, Lucas had a relieved expression upon seeing his boss awake. "Mr. Victor, thank God. How are you feeling?" he asked, approaching the bed. Victor gestured with his hand, indicating he was well enough to speak. Even so, his voice came out hoarse and low. "I'm alive, and that's something," he replied with a weak smile. "What exactly happened?" Lucas explained the accident and how Victor was found by a woman who pulled him out of the car before it exploded. "She saved my life. Who is she?" Victor asked urgently. Lucas shook his head. "Unfortunately, no one got detailed information. She left before the police could talk to her. Reports indicate she was a young woman, probably humble, with a recycling cart she left behind." Victor frowned, a mix of gratitude and curiosity filling his thoughts. He closed his eyes, trying to remember the face he saw that night. It was a vague image, but something in her eyes seemed etched in his memory. "Lucas, I need to find her. I want to thank her personally. Use whatever resources are necessary." Lucas hesitated for a moment. "Of course, sir, but do you think she wants to be found?" "That doesn't matter," Victor replied with determination. "She saved my life. It's not a debt I can ignore." As Victor rested, Lucas put the company's contacts and resources to work. It took only a few days for him to learn the basics about Alice. A hardworking woman, a single mother, supporting her daughter Luna by collecting recyclable materials. The information moved Lucas, but when he reported the details to Victor, he saw the real impact it had on his boss. "She has a daughter," Victor murmured thoughtfully. "Lucas, hire her. It doesn't matter in what position or what it takes. I want to help her without her knowing it's because of me." Lucas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What if she says no? Someone like her might get suspicious of something so sudden. Victor smiled, a mix of cunning and sincerity on his face. "You're creative. Find a way to make the offer irresistible, but make sure she doesn't know I'm behind it." Across town, Alice was starting her day with the same goal as always, making sure Luna had food on the table. Dressed in simple, comfortable clothes, she organized the recyclables she had collected the day before. Despite the challenges, her determination never wavered. As she dropped Luna off at the small community daycare, Alice barely had time to process the unexpected approach of a well-dressed man who introduced himself as an employee of a major company. "Alice Moreira?" he asked with a formal smile. "My name is Renato, and I work in human resources at Corporativa Bravati. We're expanding our team and noticed your profile through one of our community training programs. We'd like to invite you for an interview." Alice frowned, confused. "Training? I think you must be mistaken. I've never been part of anything like that." Renato kept smiling, hiding his unease. "It must be an old record, but regardless, the position is yours if you're interested. It involves simple administrative tasks, no prior experience required. We provide training, along with benefits like health insurance and childcare support." Alice's eyes widened. It seemed too good to be true. Even so, she hesitated, unsure about stepping so far out of her comfort zone. "I don't know. I've never worked in an office before," she admitted. Sensing her doubt, Renato gently pressed on. "Think about your daughter's future, Miss Moreira. This could be an opportunity to change everything." Those words struck a chord. Alice looked at Luna, playing with other children in the daycare playground, and felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it was time to take a chance. "All right, I'll accept," she finally replied. "But only because it seems like something that could help my daughter." Renato nodded, satisfied. "Excellent. You'll start next Monday. All the details and instructions will be sent to your address." Alice returned home, feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. As she thought about the new opportunity, she had no idea that her new job was directly connected to the man she had saved that rainy night. At the hospital, Victor listened with interest as Lucas gave updates. Learning that Alice had accepted the offer brought a rare smile to his face. He wondered how her life would unfold from now on, and silently vowed to repay her for what she had done for him. Lucas, meanwhile, couldn't help but notice the change in his boss. Victor's gratitude seemed to have deepened into something more profound. Still, he remained professional. "And now, sir? What's the next step?" Victor looked out the window, the city's skyline reflecting his determination. "Let things progress naturally. She deserves a chance to grow without feeling like she's being watched, but I want regular updates on how she's doing. And of course, keep everything confidential." As the sun set, a new journey began for both Alice and Victor. Two lives that had crossed paths by chance were now destined to intertwine even more. On a sunny Monday morning, Alice adjusted the simple dress she had chosen for her first day of work. Her heart raced as she looked at her reflection in the small, worn mirror. She wasn't used to formal clothes or the environment she was about to step into, but something inside her insisted on believing that this could be the start of a new chapter, for her and Luna. After dropping her daughter off at daycare, Alice headed to the company's address, holding a small bag with her documents and a notebook for notes. When she arrived in front of the towering Corporativa Bravati building, she froze for a moment. The gleaming glass, the majestic height of the structure, and the well-dressed people going in and out made her feel out of place. "You can do this, Alice," she murmured to herself before stepping inside. Walking through the revolving doors, she was greeted by a luxurious and bustling environment. The marble floor gleamed under the shoes of executives, and the receptionists looked impeccable in their suits. Nervously, she approached the front desk. "Good morning. My name is Alice Moreira. I have a scheduled meeting." The receptionist smiled, typing quickly on the computer. "Ah, yes, Miss Moreira. Mr. Renato is expecting you on the 5th floor. You can use the elevator to your right." Alice thanked him and stepped into the elevator, watching the numbers rise on the illuminated panel. Each floor seemed to bring her closer to something unknown and intimidating. When the doors opened on the 5th floor, Renato was already waiting for her. "Miss Moreira, welcome to our team," he greeted her enthusiastically. Renato led Alice down a corridor to a training room. There, she was introduced to other new employees and given basic instructions about her role. At first, it seemed simple: organizing documents, scanning files, and providing administrative support to a small department. Despite her lack of experience, Alice listened attentively to the explanations and asked questions whenever necessary, determined to do her best. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Type cupcake in the comments. Only those who get this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. While Alice was learning the first steps of her new routine, Victor was watching everything from a distance, without her knowing. Lucas kept him updated on her progress, sharing subtle details that made him smile. "It looks like she's doing well. There's no doubt she's dedicated," Lucas said as he handed over the reports. Victor read the notes with interest. Knowing that Alice was finding her place there filled him with satisfaction, but also brought a strange unease. He wanted to see her in person, to observe how she was adapting, but he knew it was too risky at that moment. "Let her continue at this pace. I don't want to interfere," Victor replied, though his mind was divided. In the following days, Alice began to feel more comfortable in her new position. The work was repetitive, but she did it with dedication. More than that, the salary was enough to ensure that Luna had better food and new clothes. For the first time in years, Alice didn't have to worry about counting every penny before going to the market. One afternoon, while reviewing a stack of documents, Alice was approached by a coworker, Mariana, who sat down next to her. "Hi, Alice, right? I'm Mariana. I noticed you're new here," she said with a friendly smile. Alice returned the smile. "Yes, I just started, still trying to get used to everything." "Oh, don't worry. Most of us started out the same way. With time, it all gets easier. And if you need help, feel free to ask me," offered Mariana, genuinely kind. The interaction made Alice feel more at ease. She started to make small friendships at work, which made the days less lonely and helped her feel part of something bigger. However, she still had no idea that the company's owner was closely following her journey. Victor, meanwhile, was about to leave the hospital after weeks of recovery. Accompanied by Lucas, he walked through the corridors with a cane for support. Although his improvement was evident, he still bore the scars of the accident. "Finally free from here," Victor said, taking a deep breath as he walked out the hospital's main door. "Now it's time to get back to work." Lucas nodded, but couldn't help noticing Victor's distant look. He knew his boss was eager to see Alice again, even if he wouldn't admit it. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Lucas asked as he helped him into the car. Victor just smiled. "There's a lot of work to be done, and something tells me it's the right time." At the office, Alice continued to focus on her tasks, unaware that Victor's return was about to change the course of things. After weeks of silence, the elevator in the main building opened, and Victor entered the company's lobby. The employees, surprised by his presence, greeted him respectfully as he headed to his floor. Alice, who was returning from a short break, didn't expect to meet anyone at that moment. But as she turned the corner, her attention was captured by a figure she instantly recognized. He stood in the lobby, impeccably dressed, but with a faint trace of fatigue in his expression. Her heart raced. It was the man she had pulled from the car on the night of the accident. But now he was here, in a place she never imagined he would be. How was this possible? She stood frozen, watching him step into the elevator and disappear behind the doors. For a moment, Alice felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Questions started to arise, but none seemed to have an answer. All she knew was that the man she had saved that night was, somehow, part of the world where she now worked. Alice spent the rest of the day trying to focus on her work, but the image of Victor lingered in her mind. She could still vividly picture the man she had pulled from the car that rainy night. Now he was here, in the same building, seemingly in charge of everything. The coincidences were hard to ignore, yet she hesitated to jump to conclusions. As she typed data at her desk, a storm of thoughts swirled in her head. Why is he here? Could he really be the man I saved? And more importantly, does he recognize me? Shaking her head, Alice tried to push away the confusion. There was work to do, and she needed to stay focused. In the office upstairs, Victor couldn't stop thinking about Alice. From the moment he saw her in the hallway, a mix of surprise and relief filled him. She was doing well, making progress, just as he had hoped. Yet, Victor knew he couldn't rush things. There was a delicate balance between his gratitude and the potential impact of revealing the truth to her. "Lucas," he called, flipping through a report. "Make sure she doesn't find out. Not yet." Lucas hesitated before replying. "Of course, sir. But if I may ask, how long do you plan to keep this a secret?" Victor leaned back in his chair, letting out a sigh. "Not much longer. But she deserves to hear it at the right time, in a way that makes sense to her. Until then, I just want to watch. Make sure she has everything she needs." Lucas nodded, though his doubt was clear. He knew Victor was walking a fine line, and one misstep could complicate everything. The next day, Alice arrived at work determined to find answers. During lunch, she pulled Mariana aside, feigning nonchalance. "Hey, do you know who the boss here is?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Mariana's eyes widened in surprise. "You don't know? It's Victor Lacerda. He owns Corporativa Bravati and several other companies. They say he almost died in a car accident a few weeks ago. I think he returned to the office yesterday." "Why?" Alice felt a chill run down her spine. The confirmation brought back all the questions she had been trying to ignore. It was him. But why hadn't she known this before? And even more puzzling, how had she ended up at this company without realizing who was behind it? "Oh, just curious," she replied quickly, masking her nervousness. "He seems important." Mariana laughed. "Important is an understatement. They say he's one of the wealthiest men in the country. And super private too. Almost no one gets to speak with him directly." Alice smiled politely, but her thoughts were in turmoil. Back at her desk, she decided to dig deeper. In the archives, she found documents outlining the company's structure and recent projects. Carefully flipping through the pages, something caught her attention. An internal memo mentioning her hiring. The note was clear. Her recruitment had been approved directly by the president. Alice froze. Why would the company's owner get involved in hiring someone like her, with no qualifications or experience? Later that day, Alice crossed paths with Victor again. He was leaving a meeting with other executives. When their eyes met, he paused for a moment, as if considering whether to say something. But instead, Victor simply nodded politely before continuing down the hall. Alice felt a surge of determination. She needed answers, and she needed them now. At the end of the day, she decided to confront Lucas, who always seemed to be nearby. Finding him in the hallway, Alice approached him directly. "Lucas, I need to talk to you." He looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, Alice, what's on your mind?" She took a deep breath before continuing. "Why was I hired at this company? Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't make sense. I had no experience, and this opportunity came out of nowhere." Lucas hesitated, confirming Alice's suspicions. He knew something. "Alice, he began, then stopped, choosing his words carefully. "You were hired because your potential stood out." "My potential?" Alice raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "That's not an answer, Lucas. Was it Victor who approved my hiring? Why?" Lucas glanced around, ensuring they were alone. He knew he was going against Victor's orders, but he couldn't avoid the truth any longer. "Yes, it was him, but not for the reason you're thinking. Victor learned about your story after the accident." Alice took a step back, as if she'd been struck. "So he knew who I was all along? He knew I saved him?" Lucas nodded slowly. "He didn't want you to know. His intention was never to make you feel indebted. He just wanted to give back somehow." Alice felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she held them back firmly. The mix of emotions was overwhelming: surprise, anger, gratitude, and above all, confusion. She didn't know whether to feel betrayed or touched by the gesture. "I need to talk to him," she declared, her voice steady. "Now." Lucas hesitated again. "I'm not sure if that's a good idea." "Lucas, please, I deserve an explanation." Reluctantly, he agreed. "All right, I'll let him know you want to talk, but please, take it easy. He never meant any harm." Alice nodded, but the turmoil in her mind wouldn't let her calm down. The only thing she knew was that she needed to confront Victor and understand what all of this meant. Alice walked down the corridor towards Victor's office, her heart racing and her mind full of questions. Each step seemed to echo in the silence of the floor, and doubt gnawed at her. Did he really have good intentions? Or was this just another way for a rich person to feel superior by helping an inferior person? Before knocking on the door, she paused, took a deep breath, and tried to organize her thoughts. Lucas, who was accompanying her, gave one last warning. "Remember, Alice, he didn't want to expose you to this. Be fair." Alice just nodded before knocking twice on the door. Victor's deep voice sounded from the other side. "Come in." She pushed the door open slowly, and there he was, sitting behind an impeccably organized desk, with an expression that mixed surprise and caution, his eyes fixed on her, immediately recognizing that something important was about to happen. "Alice," he said, standing up. "To what do I owe this visit?" She closed the door behind her, crossed her arms, and looked directly at him. She decided not to waste time with small talk. "Why am I here, Victor?" she asked, her voice firm. He tilted his head, intrigued. "What do you mean? You work here, don't you?" "You know what I'm talking about," she replied, stepping forward. "I know you approved my hiring. I know you knew who I was from the start. I want to know why." Victor sighed and leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. For a moment, he seemed to ponder how to explain everything. Finally, he began to speak. "You're right, Alice. I knew who you were. After the accident, I asked Lucas to find out who had saved me. When I learned it was you, a hard-working woman, a single mother supporting a daughter while working as a collector, I felt indebted. You saved my life, and that's not something I could just ignore." "So your solution was to hire me? Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" she asked, feeling a mix of frustration and curiosity. "Because I didn't want you to think it was charity," he replied sincerely. "I didn't want you to feel embarrassed or inferior. I wanted you to have a real chance to change your life, but on your own merits." Alice was silent for a few seconds, processing those words. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part still felt uncomfortable with the fact that everything had been planned without her knowledge. "I'm not a charity case, Victor. I've fought my whole life to get everything I have. I didn't need someone rich deciding to save me." Victor stepped forward, his gaze more intense. "I never wanted to treat you that way, Alice. That's not what I saw in you that night. I saw someone strong, someone who risked their own life to save a stranger. That's not something common, and to be honest, I think I'm the one who should be thankful." His words caught her by surprise. The sincerity in his voice was almost palpable, and it disarmed her. She looked away for a moment, trying to control the emotions that were starting to overflow. "I just don't know what to think about all this," she finally admitted. Victor approached, now just a few steps away. "Then give me a chance to prove my intentions are good. I'm not trying to change who you are, Alice. I just want you to see that you deserve all the good that's happening." Alice took a deep breath, still confused, but something inside her made her relax. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe his intentions were genuinely good. "I need time to process all this," she said, finally. Victor nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need, but please know that I never meant to hurt you." She left the room without saying another word, leaving Victor alone with his thoughts. He knew he had taken a big risk by revealing the truth, but he also believed it was a necessary one. There was something about Alice that made him want to be a better person, and he didn't want to lose the chance to prove it. In the days that followed, Alice started to see Victor differently. He wasn't the cold, distant boss she had initially imagined. During meetings and interactions in the office, she noticed how he treated everyone with respect, without a hint of arrogance. This realization made her begin to reconsider her first impressions. One day, as she typed up documents at her desk, Victor passed by and paused for a moment. "Alice, could I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his tone more casual than usual. She hesitated but nodded. "Of course." They walked to an empty conference room where he closed the door before speaking. "I know I asked you for time, but there's something I want to show you. Something that might help you understand why I feel this way." Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, handing it to Alice. Confused, she opened it and found a simple yet worn medal with the words "Courage and Sacrifice" engraved on it. "What is this?" she asked, looking up at him. "It belonged to my father," Victor explained, his voice heavy with emotion. "He was a firefighter. He spent his life saving others, but died during a rescue when I was a kid. In some ways, I think I've always looked for that kind of courage in the people around me. When you showed up that night and risked your life for me, it reminded me of him. That's why I feel so connected to you." Alice was silent, a wave of empathy washing over her. For the first time, She saw Victor as a human being, carrying his own emotional burdens and scars. The metal in her hand felt heavier than its actual weight. "I didn't know," she finally said. "Because I've never told anyone," he replied with a sad smile. "But I thought you deserved to know." The moment was interrupted by a call on Victor's phone. He apologized and stepped out to answer it, leaving Alice alone in the room. She looked again at the metal, feeling an unexpected connection to his story. Maybe, she thought, Victor wasn't just a wealthy man trying to make amends, but someone who truly understood what it meant to sacrifice for others. Alice returned to her desk with the metal still in her hand. Victor's gesture lingered in her mind, vivid and unexpected. In her entire life, no one had ever truly recognized her efforts beyond Luna. And now, here was a man like Victor, not only acknowledging what she had done, but revealing a vulnerable side that deeply moved her. As she organized some documents, thoughts of Luna filled her mind. Her little girl, smiling, playing, blissfully unaware of the complexities surrounding her mother's life. And that was a good thing. It was for Luna that Alice woke up every day, faced the unknown, and kept pushing forward. Perhaps this new chapter at the company was a chance to give Luna a future Alice herself never had. Days passed, and Alice began to feel more at ease with the idea of working there, especially after her conversation with Victor. He seemed genuine. And although there was still a fine line between gratitude and discomfort, something else was starting to emerge. Curiosity. Who was Victor beyond his wealth and power? Why did he seem to care so much about her and Luna? That curiosity grew as Victor started appearing more often on the floor where Alice worked. Although he maintained a professional demeanor, their exchanged glances and brief encounters felt laden with meaning. One particularly busy afternoon, he surprised her by stopping at her desk with a warm smile. "Alice, how are you settling in?" he asked, leaning slightly to keep their conversation discreet. She looked up, caught off guard, but answered honestly, "I think I'm doing well. I still feel a little out of place, but I'm learning." Victor nodded, pleased. "You're doing an excellent job, and if you need anything at all, my door is always open." Alice thanked him with a shy smile. As he walked away, she realized that his presence had a way of making the office feel lighter, less intimidating. Over the weekend, Alice took Luna to the park. It was one of those rare moments when she could relax and simply enjoy her daughter's company. Luna, full of energy, ran from one end of the park to the other, climbing slides and picking flowers from the grass. While watching Luna, Alice was surprised by Victor, who was walking through the park with a coffee in hand. He looked more relaxed, without his usual suit and tie. When he saw her, he smiled and approached. "Alice, what a coincidence to see you here," he said, pointing to Luna, who was running towards them. "And this must be the famous Luna." Luna stopped beside her mother, curious about the stranger. Alice smiled, a bit embarrassed, but introduced them. "Luna, this is Mr. Victor. He's my boss." Victor knelt down to be at the girl's level, extending his hand in a friendly manner. "Hello, Luna. It's a pleasure to meet you." The little girl shook his hand with a shy smile, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Do you like ice cream?" she asked unexpectedly. Victor laughed. "I love it. And you?" Luna nodded enthusiastically. "My mom promises to buy me some when I behave." Alice gave a nervous laugh, but Victor seemed genuinely charmed. He stood up and looked at Alice. "Can I join you? I think a walk would do me good," he said. Alice hesitated, but eventually agreed. The three of them spent the next hour walking through the park, chatting about light topics and laughing at Luna's antics. For Alice, it was a strange yet comforting moment. For the first time, she saw Victor outside of work, and he seemed normal, human. The following week, Victor found an excuse to talk to Alice more often. He invited her to join a small internal project, which meant they would spend more time together. Though Alice was cautious, she accepted, recognizing that the opportunity could be important for her growth at the company. During the meetings, Victor treated her with respect and valued her opinions. Alice began to realize that he wasn't just interested in helping, he genuinely believed in her. This encouraged her to work even harder, and her confidence began to grow. One day, while they were reviewing a report together, Victor mentioned something that caught Alice by surprise. "You know, Alice, sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't been at that corner that night." It's strange to think about how one decision of yours completely changed my life." She paused for a moment, looking at him. "I guess fate has a funny way of connecting people, doesn't it?" she said, somewhat awkwardly. Victor smiled. "Yes, it does. And honestly, I'm grateful for it." Alice looked away, feeling her face flush. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that made her feel unsettled. She had never experienced this kind of attention before, especially from someone like him. What Alice didn't know was that Victor was also struggling with his own feelings. Initially, he just wanted to repay what she had done for him. But over time, he began to admire her strength, her determination, and above all, her dedication as a mother. He knew he was crossing the line between gratitude and something more, but he couldn't help it. One night, while reflecting on the past few months, Victor confided in Lucas. "I can't ignore this. Lucas, Alice is different. She's unlike anyone I've ever met." Lucas, always the cautious advisor, looked at him with a worried expression. "Just be careful, sir. Feelings can complicate things." Victor sighed. "I know, but it's too late to turn back." The next morning, Victor found Luna at the daycare where Alice dropped her off daily. He had gone there on purpose, determined to understand Alice's world better. When she saw him, Luna greeted him cheerfully. "Mr. Victor, my mom says you're nice." He laughed, kneeling down to talk to her. "Your mom is an amazing woman. You're very lucky to have her." Luna smiled and hugged her teddy bear. "She always tells me I'm the most important thing in her life." Victor felt a lump in his throat. Suddenly he understood why Alice was so strong. She didn't live just for herself. Everything she did was for Luna. And that made him admire her even more. As the days passed, Alice began to notice that Victor's presence was becoming more constant in her life. Whether at work or outside of it, he seemed to find ways to be around. Gradually, the initial discomfort was replaced by something more complicated. She admired his kindness and how he seemed to understand her struggles, but she feared that this closeness might create expectations she didn't know if she could meet. One morning, while organizing her desk, Mariana approached with a curious smile. "Alice, you and the boss seem to be getting pretty close lately," she commented casually. Alice paused for a moment, trying not to show the discomfort she felt with the observation. "It's not like that. He's just helping me with the project we're working on. That's all," she replied, turning back to organize the papers. Mariana stayed quiet, but her expression showed she wasn't fully convinced. "If you say so. But honestly, I think he likes you. And if it's true, who could blame him? You're amazing." Alice laughed nervously, but Mariana's words lingered in her mind. Did Victor like her? The possibility made her uneasy, but she brushed the thought aside and focused on her responsibilities. Later that day, Alice was called into Victor's office to review the project's progress. He was seated at his desk, going through some reports, but when he saw her walk in, he greeted her with a warm smile. "Alice, glad you're here. Please, have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat down, her posture straight, her eyes focused on the documents in front of her. During the meeting, Victor was attentive, complimenting her ideas and offering suggestions. But at one point, he shifted the focus from work. "Alice, can I ask you something?" he said, his tone becoming more personal. She looked at him, surprised. "Sure. How do you do it?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Work so hard, take care of Luna, and still find the strength to keep going every day?" The question caught Alice off guard. No one had ever shown a real interest in understanding her struggles. "I don't have much of a choice, Victor. When you're a mom, everything you do is for your child. Luna is my strength, my reason to keep moving forward," she answered, trying to keep the emotion out of her voice. Victor nodded, visibly moved by her response. "That's something I deeply admire about you, Alice. Your courage and determination are truly inspiring." Alice looked away, feeling exposed. Why was he saying these things? And why did it make her heart race? In the days that followed, Alice tried to put some distance between herself and Victor, fearing that their growing closeness might cause problems. But avoiding Victor turned out to be harder than she expected. He always seemed to find a way to start a conversation, whether it was in the hallway, during lunch, or at the end of the day. Despite this, something inside her felt uneasy. There was a part of her story that Alice had never shared, not even with Victor. The past with Luna's father was a painful chapter she preferred to leave buried. Now, with these confusing emotions surfacing, she worried that this secret could become a barrier between them. As days went by, Alice began to feel the weight of the connection forming between her and Victor. Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type chocolate in the comments. Only those who've read this far will understand. Now, back to the story. One Friday afternoon, as Alice returned from lunch, Mariana appeared again. But this time, her comment carried a sharper tone. You know, Alice, people are starting to talk. This special attention Victor gives you, it doesn't seem very professional, Mariana said, her smile mischievous. Alice stopped, surprised by the remark. People? Who? Oh, rumors spread. You know how it is. Some think you're taking advantage of the situation. After all, he's never shown this much interest in anyone before, Mariana added. Alice felt a wave of nerves. She knew Victor hadn't done anything inappropriate, but Mariana's words stirred a fear she'd been trying to ignore. What others thought about her. At the end of the day, Alice decided to avoid Victor. Instead of taking the elevator as usual, she used the stairs. When she reached the ground floor, she ran into Lucas, who seemed to be waiting for her. Alice? Victor asked me to call you. He wants to talk about the project. She hesitated, feeling a tension she couldn't explain. Tell him I'll talk to him on Monday. I'm late to pick up Luna. Lucas frowned but didn't push the matter. He could tell something was wrong. That evening, Alice was at home preparing dinner while Luna, full of energy, began drawing at the kitchen table. On the paper, Luna scribbled something that caught Alice's attention. A picture of 3 people holding hands. Who's this, Luna? Alice asked, pointing to the 3rd figure beside them. Luna smiled innocently. It's Mr. Victor. He always smiles at us, and I think he likes you, Mommy. Alice froze for a moment, staring at the drawing. The simplicity of Luna's words made everything seem more complicated. How could she explain to her daughter that Victor was just her boss, when even Luna seemed to sense something more? The next morning, Alice decided she needed to confront the rumors and her growing connection with Victor before things got out of hand. She arrived early at the office and headed straight to his door. She knocked, and his short response came from inside. Come in. Victor seemed surprised to see her there so early, but his expression soon softened. Alice, this is a surprise. How can I help you? Alice sat down in front of him, crossing her arms. I need to talk about something important, something that's starting to bother me. He frowned, looking confused. Of course. Go ahead. She took a deep breath before continuing. People are talking about us, about the attention you've been giving me. They're implying that I'm only here because of your protection. Victor was silent for a moment, clearly processing what he had just heard. Finally, he spoke in a firm tone. Alice, who's saying this? It doesn't matter who. The point is, if these things are being said, it means something is wrong, she replied, trying to control her tone. And to be honest, I'm starting to think that maybe I let things get out of hand. Victor shook his head, visibly upset. Alice, that's ridiculous. The fact that I value your work or respect you shouldn't be a reason for gossip. These people are wrong, and I won't tolerate this kind of behavior in my company. But it is happening, Victor, she countered more seriously. And I need to think about what's best for me and my daughter. Victor leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers. Alice, if you're suggesting you should distance yourself because of what others are saying, I need to ask you to reconsider. You earned your place here. What others say doesn't matter. Alice looked away, fighting the confusion in her mind. There was something in his voice and the intensity of his gaze that made her want to believe him. But she knew the world wasn't always fair, and rumors could easily turn into something more destructive. I just don't want my presence here to harm you or affect my life outside of work, she said finally. Victor leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath. I understand, but Alice, I want you to know that you have my support. Always. I'll deal with these rumors and make sure nothing affects your position here. She nodded, but uncertainty still lingered in the air. Over the following days, Victor took steps to curb the rumors. He called Mariana and other employees for a private meeting, making it clear that gossip would not be tolerated in the company. But despite this, Alice still felt the weight of the words she had heard. One night, while putting Luna to bed, Alice reflected on everything that had happened. Victor always seemed to be on her side, but was that really what she wanted? He had become an important figure in her life, but the doubt about the impact of this closeness continued to grow. Victor, on the other hand, was equally restless. He knew the situation had shaken Alice, and it frustrated him. He couldn't understand how something as genuine as his admiration for her could be turned into something so negative by others. Was he pushing too hard? The days passed slowly for Alice. Although Victor had tried to contain the rumors, she still felt the looks and whispers in the office. Deep down, she knew the issue wasn't just about the gossip. There was something bigger that bothered her. The invisible barrier her own past had created. The secret she carried. That night, while finishing the dishes, Alice paused to watch Luna, who was sleeping soundly on the couch. Her daughter was everything to her, but she was also the reason for her cautious choices and her resistance to letting others get too close. Alice knew she couldn't ignore the signs that Victor wanted more than just to help her, but there was something he still didn't know about her, something that could change everything. The next morning, Alice decided she needed to get away from the tension at the office. She took a day off and took Luna to visit a nearby park, where she used to go before starting to work at Victor's company. The place had a special meaning. It was where Alice had made some of the hardest decisions of her life. While Luna played on the swings, Alice sat on a bench, lost in thought. Victor, on the other hand, felt Alice's absence at work. He had gotten used to seeing her every day, to hearing her, and now he felt something was wrong. He tried to focus on his responsibilities, but the restlessness wouldn't leave him. Finally, he decided to call Lucas. "Find out where Alice is," he ordered, without preamble. "I want to make sure she's okay." Lucas hesitated for a moment, but followed the order. A few hours later, Victor had his answer. Alice was at the park with Luna. Without thinking twice, he left the office and drove straight there. When he arrived, he parked the car and saw Alice sitting alone on a bench. She seemed distracted, watching Luna play. For a moment, Victor hesitated. Was he invading her space? Finally, he approached carefully, trying not to startle her. Alice noticed his presence before he said anything. When she turned, her face showed surprise, but also exhaustion. "Victor, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hide the tension in her voice. "I was worried. You didn't show up at work, and, well, I wanted to make sure you were okay," he answered sincerely. Alice sighed, looking away. "I just needed some time. There's a lot going on, and I wanted to clear my mind." Victor sat next to her, keeping a respectful distance, but fixing his gaze on her. "Alice, if there's anything I can do to help, you know I'm here." She laughed, but without humor. "That's what scares me, Victor. You're always there, wanting to help, trying to fix everything. But life isn't always that simple." He frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" Alice stayed silent for a few moments before finally deciding to speak. "There are things about me you don't know, things I've kept in the past because it's just easier that way." Victor leaned in slightly, intrigued. "Alice, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone. I want to understand." She looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Finally, she took a deep breath and began to share. "Luna's father, he wasn't the man I thought he'd be. When I found out I was pregnant, he disappeared. Said he didn't want a family, that it would ruin his life. So I had to move forward alone. Pregnant, I couldn't find a job, so I had no choice. I collected recyclables to sell just to afford a place to live and put food on the table for Luna. It wasn't easy, Victor, but I built a life for her and me." Victor's chest tightened as he absorbed her words. He could see the pain in Alice's eyes, the strength she had to summon to get through it all. Now he understood why she was so protective and cautious. "I'm so sorry, Alice. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. But if I can say one thing, I think you did the right thing. You gave Luna a home, love, and that's worth more than anything." Alice felt tears well up in her eyes, but she held them back. She didn't want to appear vulnerable, even though part of her longed to let go. "That's why I can't afford to make mistakes, Victor. Everything I do is for her. I can't risk something or someone disrupting our lives." Victor nodded, understanding. "I get it, but Alice, I want you to know I'm not here to disrupt anything. I'm here because I admire you, because I believe in you. And because, well, I think you and Luna are much more special than you realize." Alice looked away, feeling her heart race. It was hard to hear those words, but something in his voice made them seem true. Luna ran over to them, holding a flower she had picked. "Look, Mommy, this is for you." Alice smiled, taking the flower. "Thank you, my love." Luna then looked at Victor. "You like my mommy, don't you?" Alice's eyes widened at her daughter's direct question. Victor laughed and knelt to talk to Luna. "I like your mom a lot, Luna. She's an amazing person." Alice blushed, unsure of what to say. But before she could respond, Luna grabbed her hand and pulled her to join the play. Victor watched them, feeling a strange sense of peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to fight for the space he was beginning to occupy in their lives. The days following the park conversation brought a subtle change for Alice. While she was still hesitant to let Victor in, she felt something different about him. He didn't make empty promises or try to push her into anything. Instead, his actions spoke for themselves. He was present, but always respected the boundaries she set. At work, Victor seemed more distant in public, maintaining professionalism to avoid further gossip. Yet Alice noticed the small gestures. He always found a discreet way to ask about Luna or offer help with challenging projects. These short but meaningful moments planted a seed of doubt in Alice. Could he really be different from the other men who had let her down? One weekend, Victor decided to do something special for Luna. He called Alice, something he rarely did outside of work, and asked if he could take Luna out for a little outing. Alice's hesitation was clear in her voice. "Victor, you know I don't usually let Luna go out with anyone but me." "I understand, Alice. I don't want you to feel pressured. Think of it as a way of thanking you for welcoming me into your life, even just a little. You can come with us if you prefer." Alice was silent for a few seconds, considering the offer. Finally, she agreed, but with one condition. "If Luna wants to go, I'll come along. I don't want her to feel like I'm forcing anything." Victor accepted gladly, and the next day the three of them met at a city theme park. Luna was thrilled to see the attractions, and her excitement was contagious to Alice. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to relax and enjoy the moment. During the outing, Victor showed a side of himself that Alice had not yet seen. He laughed openly, helped Luna choose rides, and even tried to convince her to go on a roller coaster. When Luna got tired, the three of them sat under a tree, sharing an ice cream. "She has your strength," Victor remarked, looking at Luna. "You can see it in her eyes. You've done an incredible job, Alice." Alice blushed at the compliment. "I do what I can. Sometimes I feel it's not enough, but Luna doesn't seem to mind. She just wants me around. And that's what matters. She knows you love her." "More than anything," Victor said, his tone full of admiration. For a moment, Alice's eyes met his, and she felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. He seemed to really understand what it meant to fight for someone, to put someone else above yourself. The next day, back at work, Alice found a small surprise on her desk. A plant in a decorated pot with a simple card that read, "To remind you that the strongest things grow in the most unlikely places. Victor." She held the pot in her hands, an involuntary smile spreading across her face. The gesture was small, but full of meaning. Mariana, passing by the corridor, noticed the smile and couldn't resist commenting. "Looks like someone has an admirer," she said, teasing. Alice just laughed, but something inside her began to change. Maybe Victor really was different. Maybe he deserved a chance. Later that week, Alice decided to return the gesture somehow. She spent the night making homemade cookies with Luna, and the next day brought a small box to Victor's office. When she walked in, he looked up, surprised. "This is for you," she said, placing the box on his desk. "Luna and I made them. She insisted you'd like them." Victor opened the box and smiled at the carefully decorated cookies. He picked one up and took a bite, his expression showing clear satisfaction. "Perfect. Thank you, Alice. And tell Luna she has talent." Alice laughed, feeling strangely at ease. For the first time, there was no tension or discomfort between them, just a simple, sincere moment. The closeness continued over the weeks. Victor started inviting Alice and Luna to small activities, like family lunches or visits to the zoo. Luna, with her infectious energy, seemed to love Victor's presence, and Alice couldn't deny he was starting to occupy an important space in their lives. But despite this, Alice was still afraid. Afraid to open her heart and be disappointed again. Afraid that Victor didn't fully understand what it meant to be with her and Luna. One night, while putting her daughter to bed, Alice reflected on how much her life had changed in the past few months. She wanted to believe that Victor was different. But what if he wasn't? The following weekend, Victor organized an event at the company to celebrate the success of a recent project. He made sure to invite Alice and Luna, insisting it would be an opportunity to celebrate together. At the event, Alice was impressed with the organization and the way Victor seemed to command everything with ease. He approached her during the evening, offering a glass of juice. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, smiling. "Everything is amazing. You really know how to impress people," Alice replied, half joking. "The only person I want to impress is right here," he said, looking directly at her. Alice felt her face warm, but before she could respond, Luna appeared, holding Victor's hand and pulling him to dance. Victor, laughing, followed Luna to the dance floor, where he began to dance exaggeratedly to make her laugh. Alice watched from a distance, feeling a mix of joy and fear. He seemed so genuine, but there was still something inside her that resisted. That night, after the event, Victor walked Alice and Luna to their car. Before saying goodbye, he turned to Alice and with a more serious voice said, "Alice, I know you have doubts about me, about us. But I want you to know that I'm willing to wait. I won't push anything, but I'll stay by your side for as long as you need." Alice remained silent, moved by the sincerity in his words. Finally, she replied, "Thank you, Victor. I really appreciate that." As he walked away, Alice realized she might be starting to trust him. But would trust be enough to open her heart again? The bond between Alice, Luna, and Victor continued to grow stronger. Despite her reservations, Alice began to see something in Victor she hadn't seen in a long time. Stability. He was there, present, not just to help her but to build something genuine with her and Luna. Yet, a shadow from her past lingered, and she knew she'd need to confront it before moving forward. One quiet morning at the office, while Alice was reviewing reports, Lucas walked into Victor's office with a concerned expression. He carried an envelope in his hand and placed it on the desk. "Sir, this just arrived. It's about Alice." Victor carefully picked up the envelope and began reading. His face shifted from surprise to worry. The document was from a lawyer representing Luna's biological father. He had resurfaced, demanding visitation rights. "Is this serious?" Victor asked, looking at Lucas. "Very. It seems he's ready to take the case to court if necessary," Lucas replied. Victor knew this could destroy the progress Alice had made. More than that, he feared the impact it would have on Luna. By the end of the day, Victor decided to talk to Alice. He waited until everyone had left the office and went to her desk. "Alice, can we talk?" he asked, his tone more serious than usual. She nodded, curious about his expression. When they reached his office, Victor closed the door and handed her the envelope. Alice read the document, her face turning pale. "He can't do this," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Alice, I don't know all the details, but I want to help. If you need a lawyer, someone to fight alongside you, I'm here," Victor said, trying to comfort her. Alice placed the paper on the desk, taking a deep breath. "He left when he found out I was pregnant. He said he didn't want anything to do with us. And now, years later, he thinks he can just show up and claim something? It's unfair, Victor. And you're not alone in this. We'll fight this together," he assured her. Alice looked at him, touched by the determination in his voice. But a part of her still hesitated. "Victor, I appreciate it, but this is something I need to handle on my own. I don't want Luna to think I rely on others to protect her." He nodded, respecting her decision. "I understand, but know that if you change your mind, I'm here." In the days that followed, Alice threw herself into the legal battle. Between meetings with lawyers and searching for old documents, she barely had time to focus on work. Victor noticed the toll it was taking on her, but refrained from interfering, hoping she'd come to him if she needed help. At home, Luna also sensed that something was different. One night, as Alice was organizing papers at the kitchen table, Luna approached her with her teddy bear. "Mommy, are you sad?" she asked, with the innocence of someone who just wanted to help. Alice stopped and hugged her daughter, holding back tears. "No, sweetheart, I'm just tired, but everything will be okay, I promise." Luna hugged her teddy bear tightly and said, "Mr. Victor can help. He's really strong." Alice smiled but didn't respond. Could Victor really help? And more importantly, would she let him? The following week, the situation escalated. Luna's father sent a formal notice to begin the process for shared custody. Alice felt the ground fall out from under her. Her biggest concern was Luna's well-being. She knew her daughter's biological father didn't have a trustworthy record, but she feared he'd use her financial struggles against her. When Victor heard the news, he couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. That evening, he went to Alice's apartment, determined to convince her to accept his help. "Alice, I understand you want to handle this on your own, but this isn't just about you. It's about Luna. And I know you'd do anything for her, even accept help from someone like me," he said with a soft smile. Alice sighed, battling her pride. She knew he was right. "Victor, I'm so afraid this will end up hurting Luna. I don't want her to feel like her life can be divided like an object," she confessed. "And that's why you won't face this alone. I'm here, Alice, and I'm not going anywhere," he assured her. Finally, Alice agreed to let Victor help her. Together, they hired a renowned lawyer and began gathering evidence against the biological father's claim. Victor also used his resources to investigate the man, uncovering information that could be used in court. On the day of the hearing, Alice was nervous, but Victor was by her side, holding her hand as they waited outside the courtroom. When the case was called, Alice walked in with her head held high, determined to protect her daughter. During the hearing, Victor's lawyer presented compelling evidence that Luna's biological father had never shown interest in caring for her before, and that his current intentions seemed more financially motivated than focused on her well-being. Alice also gave an emotional testimony, explaining how she had fought to raise Luna on her own and never let her lack love or care. In the end, the judge ruled in Alice's favor, denying visitation rights to the biological father. When the verdict was announced, Alice felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She looked at Victor, who smiled back proudly. That night, back at the apartment, Alice finally allowed herself to relax. She watched Victor playing with Luna in the living room and felt something different. For the first time, there was no fear or distrust, only gratitude and a growing feeling that he was becoming part of the family. After Luna went to bed, Alice called Victor out to the balcony. The night was cool, and the stars shone brightly in the sky. "Victor, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us," she said, her voice breaking. He took her hands, looking directly into her eyes. "You don't need to thank me, Alice. Everything I did was because I care about you and Luna. You both mean more to me than I can express." Alice felt tears roll down her cheeks. Without saying a word, she stepped forward and hugged him, finally allowing herself to fully trust him. The days following the court victory brought a calm Alice hadn't felt in a long time. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt she wasn't facing everything alone. Luna was safe, and Victor had become a constant presence, not just in her life but in her daughter's heart as well. Despite this, Alice wasn't ready to take everything for granted. She knew opening her heart was a slow process, and even with Victor by her side, there was a lingering fear she needed to overcome. One Saturday morning, Victor showed up at her apartment with an unexpected proposal. "Alice, how about we spend the day out? Just the three of us. Somewhere peaceful, no work, no worries," he suggested. Alice hesitated for a moment. Despite trusting him more, she was still adjusting to the idea of including him in her family routine. But before she could respond, Luna ran to the door, holding her teddy bear. "Let's go, Mom, please," the little girl said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Alice laughed and agreed. "All right, but nothing too extravagant, okay?" Victor smiled, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I promise." The outing took them to a small farm on the outskirts of the city, with open fields, fruit trees, and animals that immediately charmed Luna. Victor seemed to have thought of everything, bringing snacks and even a small picnic basket. To Alice, it was a gesture more meaningful than any expensive gift. While Luna chased chickens, Victor and Alice sat under a tree watching her play. The moment seemed almost surreal to Alice, who had believed for so long that there was no room for simplicity or joy in her life. "It's nice to see you relax a bit," Victor commented, breaking the silence. Alice looked at him with a shy smile. "I haven't done years. It was always just Luna and me, trying to get by." Victor leaned in slightly, his expression serious. "You don't have to carry everything alone anymore, Alice. I want to be here for you, for both of you. And I want you to know that won't change." His words touched her deeply, but she was still afraid to fully let go. "I believe you, Victor, but I need you to understand that this is new for me." "It's not easy to trust that someone won't just disappear," she replied sincerely. Victor nodded. "I know, and I don't expect you to change that overnight. I just want you to know that I'm willing to wait as long as it takes." As the sun began to set, they gathered up the picnic things and headed back to the car. Luna, exhausted from playing all day, fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her teddy bear. On the drive home, Alice sat in silence, gazing out the window. Try as she might, Victor's gestures were slowly breaking down the walls she had built over the years. When they arrived at the apartment, Victor helped carry Luna to her room. He carefully laid her in bed and tucked her in with a blanket. As he left the room, he found Alice waiting for him in the living room. "Thank you for today." "Really?" she said softly. "There's no need to thank me, Alice. I'd do it every day if I could," he replied. Alice felt a wave of emotion, but before she could say anything, Victor stepped closer. For a moment, they stood in silence, their eyes speaking more than words ever could. Finally, Alice broke the stillness. "I want to try, Victor. I want to try to trust, but I need you to be patient with me." Victor smiled, taking her hands in his. "Always." Before Alice could respond, he leaned in slowly, making it clear he would give her the chance to pull away. But she didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes and let him kiss her. It was a gentle kiss, filled with meaning that no words could convey. Alice felt her heart race, but at the same time, a calmness washed over her. When they pulled apart, Victor's eyes remained fixed on hers. "I've been waiting for this," he murmured, still holding her hands. Alice smiled shyly, warmth spreading through her that she hadn't felt in years. "I think I was waiting too. I just didn't realize it." Victor chuckled softly, bringing a hand to her face and gently brushing her cheek. "Alice, you and Luna are everything I want. I'll never let you down." She nodded, feeling for the first time that her walls were truly beginning to crumble. In the days that followed, the relationship between Alice and Victor began to shift. It wasn't just about help or friendship anymore. It was something deeper, more meaningful. He started spending more time with them, creating moments Luna cherished. Slowly, Alice realized she didn't have to carry all the weight alone. One evening, as they were having dinner together, Luna looked at Victor with a mischievous smile. "Are you going to be my daddy?" Alice choked on her water, startled by the sudden question. Victor laughed, his gaze filled with affection. "Well, that depends on your mom," he said playfully. Luna turned to Alice, eagerly waiting for an answer. Alice blushed, but managed to laugh at the situation. "Let's take it slow, sweetie," she said, trying to hide her emotions. The following week, Victor planned a special dinner. He invited Alice and Luna to his home, something Alice hesitated to accept at first. She had never seen where he lived and feared the contrast between their lives might become too stark. But eventually, she agreed, realizing it was time to let go of that fear. When they arrived at Victor's house, Alice was surprised. Though spacious and elegant, the space felt warm and personal. There were photos from his travels, books scattered around, and even a cozy kitchen area, which Victor used to impress Luna by flipping pancakes. "It's not what people expect from a CEO, but I enjoy cooking," he said, flipping a pancake in the air. Luna clapped excitedly, and Alice couldn't help but smile. The simple gesture made her realize that, despite his wealth and status, Victor was genuine. He wasn't trying to be someone else. After dinner, while Luna played in the living room, Victor asked Alice to join him on the balcony. The cool night air brought a sense of calm as they looked out over the city lights. "Alice, there's something I want to ask you," he began, turning to face her. She looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Victor took a deep breath and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Alice's eyes widened, her heart pounding. "I know this might seem fast, but everything I've experienced with you and Luna over these past months has shown me what truly matters. I want to be by your side, Alice, always. I want to build a life with you and Luna." He opened the box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Alice Moreira, will you marry me?" For a few seconds, Alice was speechless, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she smiled and nodded. "Yes, Victor, yes, I will." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, and they embraced as emotions overflowed. Hearing the celebration, Luna ran over to them. "Are you getting married?" she asked excitedly. Alice laughed, lifting her daughter into her arms. "Yes, my love, we're going to be a family." Victor wrapped his arms around both of them, feeling more complete than he ever thought possible. Alice's life changed completely in the weeks following the engagement. Though the routine with Luna and the work at Victor's company remained intense, something had shifted inside her, a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. Victor, for his part, was more present than ever, helping her plan the details of the future they were building together. On a sunny weekend, Victor organized a lunch at his home to celebrate the engagement with close friends and some company employees. Alice was nervous. She didn't like being the center of attention and feared people might judge her for her humble background. However, Victor made sure the event was relaxed and welcoming. Luna was the star of the lunch, running around and charming the guests with her energy. Alice watched her daughter play, the smile on her face reflecting this new chapter in her life. "Are you okay?" Victor asked, approaching with 2 glasses of juice. He handed one to her, looking concerned. Alice nodded but sighed. "I just keep thinking if I really deserve all this. It feels like a dream, and well, dreams don't always last." Victor set his glass on the table and took her hands. "Alice, you deserve more than this. You deserve to be happy, without reservations, without fears, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Alice smiled, touched by his words. Before she could respond, Luna ran over, holding an improvised bouquet of flowers she'd picked from the garden. "Mommy, look what I made," Luna said, extending the bouquet to Alice. Alice took the flowers and kissed her daughter's forehead. "They're beautiful, my love. Thank you." Victor crouched down to Luna's level. "Those flowers are for Mommy, but I think I need to steal her for a few minutes. Can I?" Luna giggled and nodded. "Only if you take me to get ice cream afterward." "Deal," Victor replied, laughing. Victor led Alice to a quieter corner of the garden. Under a leafy tree, they could talk away from curious eyes. "I know this is new for you, Alice, and I know it won't be easy to get used to, but I want you to know I'm here, always," he said, looking directly into her eyes. Alice took a deep breath, allowing herself to relax for the first time that day. "Thank you, Victor, for everything, for believing in me, even when I didn't." Victor smiled and kissed her again, a gesture that seemed to seal everything they had promised each other. As the weeks passed, the wedding preparations began to take shape. Alice wanted something simple, while Victor insisted she deserved something special. In the end, they reached a compromise, an intimate ceremony in an open field, with flowers and soft lights, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. However, the journey to the wedding was not without challenges. Alice still had to deal with insecurities that arose from time to time. One day, while organizing documents at work, she found an old photo of Luna's father hidden in a drawer. The man's gaze in the photo brought back memories she preferred to forget. When Victor arrived that night, he found Alice quiet, looking out the window with the photo in her hands. He approached slowly, concerned. "What happened?" he asked, sitting next to her. Alice showed him the photo, her eyes teary. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. If I'm building something Luna will remember as good. And if somehow all of this goes wrong?" Victor took the photo and looked at it for a moment before setting it aside. "Alice, everything you've done so far has been for Luna. And everything we're building is for her too. Don't let the past hold you back. It doesn't define who you are or what you can achieve." Alice looked at him, feeling a new wave of gratitude. "Thank you, Victor. I don't know how I managed to live so long without someone like you." Victor laughed softly and held her face in his hands. "Maybe you were just waiting for the right person." Finally, the big day arrived. The field was decorated with wildflowers, and a light breeze swayed the white curtains surrounding the altar. Alice wore a simple yet elegant dress that seemed made for her. Luna, dressed as a little bridesmaid, was radiant. Victor waited at the altar, nervous but with an uncontrollable smile. When Alice began to walk toward him, all the sounds around seemed to fade away. For him, only that moment existed, that love they had built together. When they reached the altar, the officiant began the ceremony, but instead of rehearsed words, Victor decided to speak from the heart. Alice, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me what it means to fight, what it means to love unconditionally. Today, I promise to stand by your side every day, building a life full of love and joy for you and Luna. Alice couldn't hold back her tears. When it was her turn to speak, her voice trembled. But it was steady. Victor, you came into my life when I least expected it, but exactly when I needed it the most. You didn't just show me that I could trust again, you gave me hope. Today, I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your family. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Luna ran toward them, interrupting their kiss with a big hug. Now we're a real family, she exclaimed, making everyone laugh. Victor and Alice embraced Luna, feeling that they had finally found what they had always been searching for: love, security, and a promising future. What do you think about Victor's actions? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to keep up with all our stories. And take a moment to check out more heartwarming stories by clicking here on the end screen.